to Bible Basics number 1. Today we're going to talk about who decides what the Bible means. See, the goal of biblical interpretation is simple: to understand what God meant by each thing he said in the Bible. Okay, here's one of the most important things to keep in mind when interpreting the Bible. God is the one who decides what a passage means. See, he's the ultimate author of the Bible, so God and the men that he inspired to write the different books in the Bible are the ones who decide what a passage means. Responsible biblical interpretation seeks to understand what the author of a passage of Scripture intended to communicate. When your interpretation of a passage matches up with what the author was intending to communicate, your interpretation is right. But when your interpretation of a passage is different than what the author was intending to communicate, your interpretation is wrong. Here's an example. Suppose I said today was cool. Now you might read that and think, oh, he's saying today was chilly, or oh, he's saying today was awesome. Now those are two very different interpretations, but unless I was trying to be clever, and I wasn't, those two interpretations can't both be right. Okay, so who gets to decide which one's right? And the answer is, I do, because I'm the one who said it. The author is always the one who gets to decide what his or her words mean. Just because something can be interpreted in multiple ways doesn't mean that all those possible interpretations are equally right. Only the interpretation that matches up with what the author was intending to communicate is right. Now, that's not exactly quantum physics. In fact, it's one of the most basic principles of everyday communication. But it's surprising how often we forget to approach the Bible that way. Christians often ask questions like, what does this passage mean to you? But that's a bad question. The question we should be asking is, what did God mean by this passage? And we have to understand that our answers to that question are right or wrong, depending entirely on the degree to which our answers match up with what God intended that passage to mean. That's the goal of biblical interpretation, to understand what God meant by each thing that he said in the Bible. See you next time.